Hello and welcome to this in-depth discussion tailored just for you. We have a rather interesting document in our hands. It's an excerpt on the essential principles of spiritual practice, concerning delusion and speculation. Have you ever had this feeling that when we look at things or describe other people, there's always a slight defocusing, or something just isn't quite right? This material cuts straight to that problem, and the viewpoints and methods it proposes are, frankly, quite subversive to our usual way of thinking. That's right. So, our task today is to thoroughly examine what methods we usually use to guess about the world, why what comes out of our mouths often changes its meaning, and what secret advice this document offers to allow us to see more clearly, perhaps even improving our destiny. Indeed, the core view of this material can be said to be challenging the cognitive model we are so accustomed to. It suggests that the vast amount of thinking and guessing we do daily is actually quite far removed from the original state of things. We are often driven by our internal delusions, feelings, and impulses, yet we may not even be aware of it. Delusion, feeling, impulse. Putting these three terms together sounds quite intense. Yes, and it doesn't just point out the problem. What's more interesting is that it also points the way, suggesting a path through conscious spiritual training to break free from what it calls a false state and enter a more real world. Spiritual practice. Perhaps we should start with the most common scenario. How do people speak? That's a very practical starting point. The material mentions that people are always curious and want to understand things. But if they don't know the truth, what is the most direct reaction? It's starting to employ thinking and guessing. There is a very vivid metaphor here. It says we take our past experiences, memories, or even imagination, and start pasting them onto people or things we don't understand. Almost like applying patches. Patches? But after this piecing together and patching, the thing often no longer resembles its original form. The original text says something like this: they can only paste what they have thought or seen before. Just like applying patches. After patching, it is no longer the same as the original. The description of applying patches is quite apt. Isn't this what we often call stereotypes or preconceived notions? Let's ask the audience directly. Do you have this experience? You hear a friend describe someone wonderfully. You go in with super high expectations, and when you finally meet them, the gap is huge. When you want others to think highly of someone, you might unconsciously apply a beautifying filter when describing them. Applying a beautifying filter. The listener believes it, but when they see the actual person, they are utterly confused. They look like that? That description is too accurate. Conversely, what if the description is too understated? The material also mentions that if you describe something lightly, you might just be aiming for objectivity, but the listener receives the message as, this isn't important. But what if the person you understated is actually the key figure in the entire event? The original text calls them the protagonist. The protagonist, right? So, the point you emphasize turns out to be insignificant to the other person, while the thing you casually glossed over is what they latch onto and pursue relentlessly. This is a disaster. It feels like during the signal transmission, more and more noise is introduced, until the whole message becomes what the text calls, it's what you said, but it's also not what you said. This communication gap is enormous. Yes, and this material believes this is not merely a problem of communication skills. It digs deeper, touching the root of our cognition. It uses the triad of delusion, feeling, and impulse to describe our internal state. It posits that most of the time, we are actually living in a false world constructed by these elements. A false world? That sounds quite heavy. But don't we usually think we see things clearly and understand things well? That is precisely the problem. The material points out that we are often very confident in our judgments, feeling that I must be correct. This excessive confidence, which it calls concealment by arrogance literally, the arrogant mind obscuring the truth, prevents us from hearing different voices or perspectives. Concealment by arrogance. That makes a certain kind of sense. So, is this delusion, feeling, and impulse the same for everyone? This is where it gets even more interesting. The material emphasizes that even when facing the same object at the same time, Everyone's combination of delusion, feeling, and impulse is unique. It gives an example. A group of people sees the same teapot. One thinks, "Wow, how beautiful." Another might think, "What is this thing?" One thinks about its practical use. Another notices its color scheme. Another senses its texture. They are all completely different. People say everyone has their own system. Does this explain why our views on the same thing, like a movie, a policy, or even the same news event, can differ so much? It turns out the program activated within us is fundamentally different. You could understand it that way. There are already large individual differences in our internal sensations, associations, and impulsive reactions. This, in turn, affects expression. The material even mentions a situation. Some people actually understand things in their hearts, but perhaps because of accumulated habits of speaking carelessly in the past. What the material calls accumulated negative karma of speech or too much verbal karma, they find it difficult to find precise words to express themselves. They want to talk about East but end up talking about West. The words don't match the meaning. And the more they talk, the more confused it gets. Eventually, they give up communicating and choose to escape. That sounds quite helpless, wanting to speak, but not being able to do it clearly, eventually leading only to silence. So communication deviations are intertwined with our internal state and even past habits. Is there a solution to this? Next, the material introduces a core concept to explain the phenomenon we are experiencing and how to change it. That concept is karma, or the in Chinese. Karma. We hear this word often, but it seems to have many different interpretations. How does this material discuss it? It proposes that everything we see before us, including our own bodies, the people we encounter, and the things we experience is not accidental, but a manifestation of karmic appearance. Dollar. The shame dollar. This is the result accumulated from past actions, including thoughts, words, and deeds. The reason you see certain things is because your karma guides you to see them. This is called discovering through karma. Dollars on. The Fashion dollar. Simply put, the way you perceive the world, and even the world you experience itself, is related to your past actions. Discovering through karma, meaning the reality we experience is actually the report card of our past actions. This view is quite startling. So what direct reminders does this offer for our daily lives? There is a very direct suggestion. When we encounter something we don't understand or can't grasp, what should we do? The material says, if you don't know, frankly admit you don't know. Absolutely do not force yourself to think or guess. Why? Because in that state, your thinking and guessing are very likely based only on the previously mentioned delusion, feeling, and impulse, rather than on facts. The original text warns quite bluntly, because what you know, you know. What you don't know, you don't know. Relying on thinking now will only lead to delusion, and it definitely won't be the truth. This reminder is very important. Admitting I don't know seems to require more courage than guessing wildly. Does the material give an example? Yes. For instance, you see a fine piece of blue and white porcelain, even if you see it with your own eyes. Can you be certain of its material composition? Which kiln it came from? The firing temperature, or the glaze formula used? The material says you probably still don't know. Or consider a diamond. Some people feel it's useless other than being shiny. It can't be eaten or drunk, but to others, it is a priceless treasure. Yes, value judgment is indeed very subjective. So the key advice arrives. Do not too quickly, or too easily, apply labels like useful or useless, good thing or bad thing, to things. The material warns that once you deny something due to your own ignorance or prejudice, you might permanently lose the benefit it could have brought you. Permanently lose the benefit it could have brought you. This sentence carries a lot of weight. Does this mean our casual judgments might cause us to miss out on many potential opportunities or values? Doesn't this encourage us to maintain a more open and humble attitude towards unknown people and things? Absolutely correct. So you see, since our perceptual system is inherently prone to interference from delusion, and communication is full of distortion caused by various colors filters, what should we do? This material then introduces a method of spiritual practice, which it believes is a path to fundamentally change the current situation. Spiritual practice. That sounds quite serious. What specifically needs to be done? The core principle is, first, thoroughly recognize and clearly see how your internal delusion, feeling, and impulse operate. Then, consciously choose to no longer mix with them or be led by the nose by them. Instead, you must begin to learn to rely entirely on wisdom to make judgments and take action. This is a process of shifting from passive reaction to active choice, from relying on delusion, feeling, and impulse to relying on wisdom. This sounds like a huge transformation. So, how is this operated specifically? The practical method is to actively and consciously create good karma. How? The dollar. Create good karma? How? Through the aspects we can control: body, speech, and mind, the physical actions, the words spoken, and the thoughts held in the mind. We must strive in all these areas at all times. This is not passive waiting. It is very active creation. Body, speech, and mind all need effort. The scope is quite broad. Is there a more focused method? Yes. The material specifically emphasizes a very important and relatively easy to start method called joyful appreciation of merits. Sui Shigong de dollar. Joyful appreciation of merits. What does this mean? Sounds a bit archaic. Not at all. Put simply, it means practicing to discover, experience, appreciate, and praise any small quality of goodness, good action, or achievement in others. The scope of others here is very broad. The material mentions Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, as well as all beings around us, anyone. Even if it's just a minuscule bit of good, one must sincerely rejoice in and praise it. Just appreciating and praising the good in others. That doesn't sound too hard, but does it have a special effect? This is where a mechanism the material calls particularly crucial comes into play. It directly states, how much you praise is how much will be realized in you. Praise how much? Realize how much? Does this mean that the virtues I praise in others will also manifest in me? That sounds somewhat incredible. How is this to be understood? Is it a psychological effect? Or is there another explanation? This material explains it from the perspective of karma and cause and effect. It holds that when you sincerely rejoice in and praise the good deeds or merits of others, that thought and speech of praise itself constitutes the creation of a very powerful good karma. Praise itself is good karma. Yes, the fruition of this good karma will cause similar qualities or good circumstances to ripen and manifest more easily in you. You can think of it as, by appreciating the light in others, you also light up the corresponding lamp within yourself. Using the analogy of lighting up the inner lamp makes it seem more imaginable. What if one encounters a truly terrible person and genuinely cannot find any virtue to praise? One can't just force it, right? The material has considered this situation as well. It says if you truly cannot find anything to rejoice in, then take a step back and bless them instead. Bless them? Sincerely bless them to possess the ability for all good things. The original wording is the ability for go, OD, and also bless them to lose the ability to create negative karma, the ability for bad karma in the original text. This intention of blessing itself is also a good karma, and the ultimate benefit will return to oneself. So there is a backup plan. From praise to blessing. It feels like this method covers a rather wide range. Yes, but the material also emphasizes that this practice is not something done occasionally. It requires continuous and very strict execution. One must guard and watch their thoughts and conduct at all times, without letting up or becoming lax. The original term is fang yi, or heedlessness. Once a bad thought arises, or an inappropriate word is spoken, or a bad deed is done, one must immediately repent and immediately stop it. Guarding oneself and immediately repenting. That sounds like it requires strong self-awareness and discipline. It absolutely does. The material even uses a very strong metaphor to describe this determination. It says if you find your thoughts are not honest, if you start having crooked ideas, you should act as if you are slapping yourself a few times to strike down that thought with willpower, never indulging it. Slapping yourself a few times. That metaphor is too harsh. It makes my cheeks ache just hearing it. Why must it be this strict? Is the matter that serious? Because from the perspective of this material, the stakes are too high. It is directly related to your life in all successive lifetimes. Life in all successive lifetimes? Yes. It suggests that this kind of strict management of one's internal thoughts is even more fundamental and important than observing external behavioral norms or precepts, because the mind is the source of action. As long as you are truly willing to get serious about practicing this, the material believes you can invoke a power that transcends our usual understanding. It calls this the inconceivable power of the Dharma dollar, Fali Buyi dollar, and the compassion of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to help you achieve your goal. Here the emphasis is that personal determination and effort are the keys to activating this help. Life in all successive lifetimes. This broadens the scope considerably. So this concept of practice can actually be integrated into our daily lives completely, and it must be integrated into life. The material says that everything perceived through the six senses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind, should not be allowed to pass by in vain. Do not let it pass by in vain. $B Congo dollar. This means not letting these experiences slip away for nothing. Every single encounter, every seeing, hearing, or thinking should be utilized to sow the best possible cause for oneself. Every sensory experience becomes an opportunity for practice. That is very proactive. So, is the most convenient and recommended method still the joyful appreciation of merits we just discussed? Yes, the material believes this is the most convenient and effective starting method. Even when encountering people or things that make you feel very bad, you must practice thinking. Is there a possibility, however small, that this person or event possesses some good aspect that I do not know or have not seen? The material simply states, a person in this life always has one thought of good. If you can find even a sliver of possibility, then rejoice in and praise it. A person in this life always has one thought of good. This sentence leaves a lot of room for reflection, trying to find that sliver of light, even in the most difficult circumstances. Yes, the material also adds a touch of humility, saying that this method of joyful appreciation of merits might be slightly more basic compared to the practice of the sixth patriarch Huineng, who cultivated compassion by refraining from killing while living among hunters. However, it emphasizes that this is a very practical starting point that everyone can begin. So it sounds like this is not just a set of esoteric philosophical theories. According to this material, it's more like a very concrete action guide. And the goal is clear. It's for the sake of your own life, even your life in successive lifetimes. By consciously and continuously sowing good seeds in every moment, good results will naturally manifest outwards in the future. This is an attitude of high responsibility for one's own future. Alright, our study of this excerpt on the essential principles of delusion and speculation concludes here for today. A quick review. It reminds us that our usual understanding and communication are easily influenced by internal delusion and speculation, leading to distortions. But it doesn't stop there. It points out a clear path. We can consciously manage our body, speech, and mind, especially by practicing to discover and praise the merits of others, which is joyful appreciation of merits, to actively create good causes and conditions for ourselves, thereby improving our state and future. There is actually a very powerful sentence hidden in this material worth reflecting on. Say what is good of others, give what is good to others, and receive what is good yourself. This sentence directly connects our speech and actions, our attitude towards others, and our own gains. This also leads to an idea you might want to test out for yourself. In everyone you meet from now on, family, colleagues, friends, or even strangers, can you deliberately seek out and, in your heart, or even verbally if you wish, sincerely praise one specific virtue, one good deed, or any aspect you admire? A small exercise. Yes, it doesn't need to be a world-shaking event. It might just be a tiny observation, a single word of heartfelt appreciation. Treat this as a small personal experiment. Practice planting a good seed for yourself, and see if this simple action brings some different feelings to your inner self, or if it leads to new discoveries about the people and things around you. This question is left for you to slowly experience and explore in your life.